Hi there, my name is Joyce and I'm a propagator at Leaf. Now you might be wondering, what is propagation? And propagation is growing a new plant from a part of another plant. That could be from the seed, or it could be from the stem, the leaves, or the roots. And a lot of the plants that you see here are grown from those other methods. But let's talk about seed today. And more specifically, let's talk about reading a seed packet when you want to grow veggies for your garden. So what kinds of seeds are there to think about? Well, things that might be important to you are your seeds sourced organically? Are your seeds heirloom? And there's also things like, are your seeds open pollinated versus hybrid? And let's talk about that. So open pollinated, yeah. So seeds that are open pollinated means that the parent plants were pollinated by wind or insects or even people just by natural means, and that the parent plants are both the same species and variety. This means open pollinated seeds grow true to type, which means that they have almost all the desirable traits that you got from the parent plant. Next is hybrid seeds, which is technically not open pollinated because it's a crossing between two parent plants of different plant varieties. And the crossing yields an F1 hybrid variety that often was bred because it has a really desirable trait. Often it's either disease resistant and or it yields a very vigorous crop. However, one pretty big downside of the F1 hybrid is that it only lasts one season. As in, if you were trying to save the seed from that hybrid plant and grow it another season, it will not breed true because it wasn't open pollinated from one specific seed variety. So you would have to buy that seed again each year. Something that a lot of home growers might be interested in is whether or not your seed is organic. And so organic seeds were produced with methods that only use natural, aka non-synthetic means of fertilization or pest control. And a good label to look out for if you're buying organic is if it's certified organic, which means that the seed is organic and it comes from a certified organic grower. Another hot topic that you might be interested in is whether or not your seeds are genetically modified. So genetically modified organisms, or GM seeds, they were produced by inserting DNA sequence into that of the seed, and that yields desirable traits again, like whether it's drought tolerant or if it's a vigorous grower. Whether or not you are a fan or not a fan of GM seeds, an important thing to know is that they can only be sourced by commercial growers. That means that it's really difficult and very unlikely that as a home grower you can have access to buying GM seeds. One good thing to look out for is if you're buying from a seed company, check out their website about page, and they will often state that they have taken the Save Seed Pledge, which means they're committed to neither sourcing nor selling anything that's been genetically modified. Another good label to look out for is if it's certified non-GMO by the Non-GMO Project. However, one way that you could be getting GM seed is if you're saving seed from produce you buy at a grocery store. Unless you know that it's heirloom, organic, and not a hybrid, it's really difficult to know what variety you're growing and whether or not it's been genetically modified. So keep that in mind. One more term that you should be looking out for is whether the seed is heirloom. Heirloom seeds, I like to say, is a seed with a story, because heirloom seeds are all open pollinated varieties, and they are often saved from the very best crops from family farmers that have saved and tracked down and passed along these seeds for generations and generations. And you can often find kind of like their origin story, or who was the first to kind of cultivate this particular variety. And with that, let's look at some seed packets. All right, so what do we have here? We have a ton of awesome seed packets, and we were really fortunate to receive all of these as donations from several amazing seed companies. And if you're curious about what seeds does Leaf use or source, well, we definitely prioritize all non-GMO seeds, definitely. And then we also try our best to request organic and or heirloom seeds. And then lastly, which is quite important, is that we try our best to source from local companies, as in local to the state of California or adjacent states. And then sometimes we will also use hybrid seeds when it is a variety that's quite popular. A quick question for you is, do you know what zone you live in? If you don't, a quick Google search for the USDA plant hardiness zone. If you type in your zip code, it will tell you what zone you live in. And this is important because it helps you determine which plants will thrive and tolerate in your local temperature ranges. So give that a search. And now let's talk about the seed packets we have here. Okay, 3 important things that we see on the front of the packet. Seems a little bit obvious, but for example, we want to know the name of the plant. Yep, tomato. That it's called, the variety name is called Berkeley Tie-Dye Pink. And then lastly is, let's focus in here. Lastly is the name of the seed company. Now, why is this super important? Well, if you have questions that maybe the back of the seed packet doesn't answer, or if there's nothing on the back of the seed packet, you can at least Google or look up their website, check out what's so neat about this company, what they do, or if they specialize in heirloom or something like that. And if the listing just happens to not be there, sometimes it's the case if they've sold out or something, you can at least Google the variety name, right, and learn a little bit more about it, and specifically if it's suitable in your climate zone. Okay, now let's flip to the back of all these packets and take a look, and we'll see a little bit of why not all seed packets are the same. All right, so we're looking at the back of all these packets. A lot of text, sometimes not always the case, right? Let me move this here. Despite all of this text, what they all typically have in common is that they will always, one, have a description of the particular variety, why you would choose this one, right? What makes it appealing. And then the second bit is planting tips. And it might come in this paragraph, but almost always my eye is drawn to these charts on the sides. So let's take a look at those. Here are some of the examples of that seeding chart I was talking about. So they will almost always tell you about what seed depth you should plant it at. So in this case, what is this? Habanero pepper, you should plant at 1/4 inch below the surface of the soil. Another thing that they tell you is seed spacing, and in this case, what is this? Renee's Garden is taking the opportunity to tell you that they strongly advise you start peppers indoors. In other places, they tell you the distance between seeds if you were to place seeds into one big tray, or if you were to directly plant them outdoors. Another important thing is days to sprout, right? You kind of want to know how long to expect your seeds to come out of the soil. So in this case, this cucumber will take 1 to 2 weeks, or this is in days. Another important thing that I look out for is they don't always tell you the mature size, which I think in this case it tells you mature height. But another way you can kind of guess the mature size you're working with is plant spacing. Not seed spacing, but the plant spacing. So in this case, for the cucumber, you should place them about 8 inches apart from each other. This is accommodate for the mature size, right? And then other things that they may or may not tell you are sun requirements, sometimes fertilizing requirements, or water requirements. But if you don't see it on the packet, what can you do? You can look up the variety either on their website, or another great resource is your local UC Master Gardener if you live in California. And you may or may not have noticed, but throughout the front and the back of the packet, they always try to add in some labels. So they could be organic, you could see non-GMO verified, right? And then open pollinated and untreated. And this one's a special one. This is Open Source Seed Initiative, OSSI. And I don't think I talked about it before, but this will be a whole other video. But just know it's awesome. Some companies, they won't tell you if it's organic, or they won't tell you everything about it. It's best to look up on their website. And just because you don't see the USDA organic doesn't necessarily mean that the grower isn't growing organically. So if you check out some of the descriptions or the about page of the website, oftentimes growers that aren't willing to, or maybe cannot afford the USDA organic label, they already are growing organically. So another thing that is often on seed packets is in the seed instructions, they will say something like, sow X number of weeks before or after your average last frost date. And what that is referring to is you should know your hardiness zone. If you know your hardiness zone, you will know your average first and last frost date. And what that means is when there's a chance of the soil reaching a freezing temperature of 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's really important that you follow the instructions and either sow a couple weeks before the average last frost date, which you would be doing indoors for sure, or you would be sowing outdoors X number of weeks after the average last frost date in your hardiness zone. And here it's saying, or check when the soil temperature is at least 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So you would either measure the temperature of your soil or you would be going by the average last frost date. All right, some final thoughts to wrap up is when you're shopping for seed, what are your own priorities, right? Are you interested in organically sourced seed or heirloom versus hybrid? Another thing is, are the plant varieties you're looking for suitable for your climate region, right? And a good thing to know is what hardiness zone you live in. Also, not all seed packets are the same. And if you are missing or have more questions that the back of the seed packet doesn't answer, it's really good to check out their website for more information. If it's not there, you can also do a Google search, and UC Master Gardeners are a really great resource. Also, if you live in the Fremont area or the Tri-City area where Leaf is, all of these varieties that you see here, we will be growing out and selling them for our 2021 plant sale. So be on the lookout for that. Until then, or even after you bought the plant, maybe, we're really excited to share that we just launched our own Wikipedia. It's at wiki.fremontleaf.org, and you can go there, check out our seedling catalog. On there, we will have all the information on each of these varieties and more. All the information that we talked about that may or may not be on the seed packet, and we will also have extra information like whether this variety is container friendly or easy to grow. We will also talk a little bit about common diseases and pests to look out, and so on. So please give that a look and even contribute to our wiki. With that, thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you next time. Happy planting!